All right, thanks for joining me here today, Kyle, in Wolfboro. Looking at this ash tree, deciding should we treat this tree or should we not treat this thing? What are the things that you look for in determining whether it makes sense to chemically treat and protect an ash tree?
Yeah. So the first thing you've got to do when you're thinking about treating a tree is look at that formula of the value of the tree compared to the cost of doing the treatments. And if you've done the math and you've determined that the value is high enough that it's worth saving the tree using pesticides, the next step is determining whether the tree is a good candidate for treatments. And so you've got to determine how healthy the tree is, because that's going to determine whether it's a good candidate. You've got to determine whether it's in an environment that is safe and legal to treat. That's an important part.
Yeah.
And if it's healthy enough and it's safe enough and then the cost is lower than the value, then it's a good candidate to treat. And so for this tree, the things that I'm looking for right away, we've already determined that it's a high value tree. It's sitting in a yard where the shade is really important and the replacement cost would be really high. The takedown costs are really high. And so for this tree, we know that we want to treat it. And so now we've got to determine whether it would take the treatment.
Yep.
Is it healthy enough to accept the pesticide and work well? And so the first thing that I look for is how much of the tree is in live crown,
Yeah.
and whether there's more than 50% of that crown living.
So
And
that's
so
sort of your cutoff.
my cutoff is whether there's at least 50% of the crown is alive.
Okay.
If it's not at least 50% alive, it's probably not going to draw in the pesticides very well, and the chance of it working are not good.
Okay.
So we say if it's more than 50% alive, it's probably going to live and take the treatment. Less than 50%, it's not.
Okay.
So this tree in particular is a beautiful candidate. It's wonderful. 80% of the tree is in live foliage, and you've got probably 10-20% dieback. So we know for sure that the pesticide will get into the tree and it will work well.
Great. So what is the best time of year to be treating the tree?
So you can legally treat the tree anytime from spring to fall while it has green leaves and the ground isn't frozen.
Okay.
So, but the best time to do it is in May, June, July,
Okay.
when there's good moisture in the ground and the tree is drawing really well.
Okay.
So the windier it is, the sunnier it is, the nicer the day, the more the leaves are drawing moisture out of the roots. So anytime you're getting a lot of transpiration, it's a perfect opportunity to do the injections.
Okay, so drought conditions, though,
Yeah.
you'd want to
So once you
avoid
hit
those.
midsummer, late summer, it's kind of droughty. The leaves are sort of shutting down. They're sort of protecting themselves against drought, so they're not drawing a lot of moisture out of the ground. That's not a good time to treat. You can do it. I mean, you can put you can inject the pesticide and let it sit and let the tree take it when it wants. But the optimum time is May, June, and July.
Okay. And so when you treat a tree, how long does that treatment last? How long is that tree protected?
Well, it depends on the pesticide you're using.
Okay.
But the pesticide that we recommend, emamectin benzoate, is the active ingredient. That will stay in the tree, in the system of the tree, for 2 to 4 years.
Okay.
Definitely 2 years of really good protection. The third and fourth year, you're getting a little bit less protection. And so we generally recommend a rotation of every 2 to 4 years for that treatment.
Okay. So looking at, I guess we should talk a little bit about, you mentioned treating with emamectin benzoate. So protective equipment.
So if you're ready to do the treatments and you're on your own property in New Hampshire and you don't need to be licensed. You don't have to have a pesticide applicator's license on your own property.
Okay.
But you do need to follow the label really closely. Everybody, regardless of your licensing, needs to follow the label, whatever it says on the label. The protective equipment for Triage G4 is shoes, socks, long pants, long sleeves, eye protection, and gloves.
And so how do you determine how much chemical that are you going to put into a tree?
Yeah.
How do you figure that out?
So the label gives you a range.
Okay.
So the range for emamectin benzoate, for all the different products for emamectin benzoate, whether it's Triage G4 or Mectinite, the range is 2 to 10 milliliters per inch of diameter at breast height.
Okay.
So this tree is 16 inches at the breast height. So we know 16 inches times, I'm going to use 4 milliliters. That's right in the middle range.
Alright,
It's
you
not the
find that's
lightest dose
effective?
and it's not the heaviest dose. And we found with everything we've done over the years that works just as well as anything.
Okay.
You don't, for our purposes, we don't ever go over that mid-range
Okay.
of 4 milliliters per inch of DBH.
All right. And so 16-inch tree, 4 milliliters per inch of diameter. You're talking 64 milliliters. You're going to be putting into that tree.
Right.
How do you determine where you put it?
Yeah. So we know from the diameter how many holes we're going to do because we're going to do 1 injection hole per inch of DBH.
Okay.
So we're going to do 16 injection holes at 4 milliliters of pesticide per hole, and we're going to do it right at the ground level.
Okay.
So this tree we've already treated, and these are what the injection holes look like. They're right just above the ground level.
Okay.
And so this particular system is the plug system, and so you put the two-way valve into the tree, and the injection needle goes into that two-way valve and places the product behind this valve. There are other systems that I can show you that are plugless.
Okay. So it's going to get injected through that valve and it's going to be held inside the tree.
Right, so I've drilled a hole that's about an inch beyond the bark.
All
So
right.
it's the bark plus an inch.
Okay.
And so this product will sit in that pocket that I built with the drill.
Okay.
And then the tree will draw it up. As it's
Okay.
drawing moisture out of the ground, it'll take the pesticide with it.
Okay.
Takes about 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah,
and the
so
seed will be through the
yeah.
tree. Okay.
Some of the research done at UNH has shown that that emamectin benzoate will be in the leaves in about 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so you just got to find a new place, preferably not above or below the old hole. It's got to be off to the side because that decay column runs up and down with that hole. And so as long as you're off to the side a little bit, you're fine. Just don't put it right directly above.
Okay, so you mentioned that plastic plugs have been used here. Can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of using the plastic plugs versus
Sure.
not using them?
Yeah, so there's several different injection systems out there. And some are called the plugless system, and then the other systems are with plugs, so it's the plug system. And so there's pluses and minuses of both systems, and they both work really well. And the plugless system uses a little bit smaller diameter hole,
Okay.
so that's nice. And you have to wait for the product to be taken up by the tree before you pull the needle out of the hole. So it just takes a little bit more time than the plug system. Whereas the plug system is just creating that two-way valve, and you can put the pesticide right in the tree, and regardless of whether the tree is taking it or not at that moment, it'll be there for the tree when it wants it.
Okay, so say on a cloudy day or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, so the things that determine whether the tree is really drawing moisture is how well it's transpiring that day. Windy days, sunny days, awesome days to treat.
Yeah.
And on the south side of the tree. The south side takes it up a lot better than the north side because it's sunnier, it's warmer, it's transpiring more on that south face, and so those are the best places to do the plugless system.
Okay.
Yeah, and the plug system, the plastic stays in the tree,
Okay.
so that's always problematic. Healthy trees, though, we've seen in the last 5 years that we've done both. The holes grow over about equally for both plug system and plugless.
Okay.
I look forward to, in Concord, we have some plug system trees that we did about 8 years ago. And so I want to kill one and cut it off right where the plugs are because I'm dying to see what those plugs look
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you know, deep in the tree.
Yeah.
But all the research that's been done has shown that it has not caused a tree health issue. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, really, and given the other alternative of
Well, that's
tree
the
being
thing. And
dead,
so this is the only time we are ever recommending that anybody drill holes in their tree.
yeah.
I mean, for any other pesticide that we have, for any of our pests, we're using bark applications for hemlock woolly adelgid
Yeah.
or foliar applications for other things. And we're never recommending doing injections because of the holes. But for this, your option is take it down because EAB is going to kill it, or you can drill it and inject it.
Yeah.
Because this product, all of the products that work really well have to be injected.
Okay.
You can't, there is no formulation of emamectin benzoate that you can apply to the bark.
Okay.
It has to be injected. And so the reason you have to inject it is because if you tried to spray it on the bark, it would be a dead product before it even penetrated. It photodegrades really quickly. And so it works to our advantage. There is pesticide in the leaves when they fall, but it degrades so quickly, that it doesn't even get into the soil system. So if you're going to use the plugless system, and definitely don't place anything in the plugs. I mean, in the old days, they used to tar over holes and fill with cement and do all kinds of different things to holes in trees. But it turns out that that moisture that gathers around the plugs creates more of an issue than letting the tree just heal over. Usually within a healthy tree is within 2 years, you won't even be able to know where you plug those. Absolutely the same with the plugless system. In fact, the plugless system will actually close quicker. The diameter of the holes are smaller, and doesn't have the plastic to get around. So those will close even quicker.
So could you talk a little bit about, this is a systemic pesticide, can you talk a little bit about pollinators, woodpeckers,
Yeah.
and potential impacts?
Yeah, so the beauty of systemic pesticides, whether it's a neonic like imidacloprid or dimetefran that are injected, there's very little non-target damage. And so in the old days when you see guys with the big foliage sprayers just spraying big areas of trees and bushes, they're hitting a lot of non-targets. Bees could be in there, all kinds of different bark beetles and wood borers and all kinds of things that you really wouldn't normally care to be treating are going to take a dose. But the beauty of systemic pesticides is that you're putting it in the host that you want to treat, and that's it. So if I treat this tree, when I walk away, it's dry. There's no pesticide here at all. No, there's no opportunity for anything to take a dose of that.
Okay.
So and the beauty of ash is that they're not insect pollinated; they're wind pollinated, and they don't have the right type of flower for bees.
Okay.
And so no bees would be coming to an ash tree in the first place.
Okay. That's
So
great.
they don't have the what's that? Not the pollen, the nectar.
Nectar.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they don't have nectar in their flowers. So with this plugless system, we're going to put a 15/64 inch hole somewhere close to the ground where the tree is healthy. We got good live wood, and I think I'll go right here, and I go about an inch beyond the bark. So I can sort of, when you go through the bark, you can feel yourself hit the cambium, and then I go another inch and then come out. And I try not to spin the blade, the bit, because the more you spin in and out, you're cauterizing that hole, so you'll get worse uptake. Yeah. So if it's 18 inches times 4 inches of 4 milliliters per inch of DBH, this tree is going to get a total of 72 milliliters. And so I'll dial in my total dose of 72 milliliters. And then my injection dose is going to be 4 milliliters at each of the holes. And so I've put that in, and now we're ready to go. If the tree is really healthy, nice and sunny, nice and windy, it's going to go really quick. It takes it up really fast. If it's a cloudy day, it's kind of like injecting a rock. It's just sitting there. It'll drive you crazy. So based on the taper of this tree, those 18 holes will probably be spaced out about 4 inches, 4 to 6 inches. But yeah, it goes in there at 200 PSI.
All right.
And if you don't have it set properly, it could come out. Pretty rare. I almost never see that happen. But you can see this hole that I just did, that it's pretty hard to see, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's the plugless system. It's And this tree's, I've done both of these holes already. So that's the plugless system. So you can see there are advantages to it. If you're a small town and you're only going to do 50 trees a year and you can afford to wait for the perfect day, use the plugless system. It's got smaller holes, they'll close over quicker, no problem. If you're a arborist that has 77 clients and you've got to do 13 today, regardless of whether it's pouring out or not, you probably got to go to the plug system. I think that the cost is fairly comparable, except that there's the plugs cost something that the plugless system doesn't need. But the beauty is that you can treat a tree regardless, and the pesticide will sit in the pocket and be taken up slowly as the tree wants it. Yeah, and it's not going to just, like if I pulled that out, if I put that in the plugless system and pull it out before the tree's completely taken it, it's going to dribble all over the ground.
Okay.
So if I was a homeowner and I had a beautiful mansion or whatever, and I was responsible for doing my own treatments, I'd probably have this one.
Okay.
I'd have the plugless system. But at work today, for all of those forested sites that we're doing across the state, I'm using the plug system, because the forested trees just don't, the crowns are smaller, they don't draw as well, and I'd be there for 2 days trying to do 12 trees. So I use the plug system. Now I've got a different bit. It's 19/64 instead of 15/64, and we have the and we've got the two-way valves that we put in the tree.
So if an arborist were looking at purchasing this equipment, really this is the only treatment that you would recommend drilling into a tree to
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So they'd be buying it specifically for treating for emerald ash borer.
Well, I mean, it's labeled. You can certainly, there's lots of other things you can treat for. It just so happens that for our purposes in Division of Forest and Lands, we don't think there's any other reason to drill holes for pesticides. I mean, the only other pesticides that we're using is for hemlock woolly adelgid right now. And the bark applied dinotefuran works awesome. So why drill holes if you don't have to?
Okay.
Even though I could treat for hemlock woolly adelgid with this.
You'd be
But-
putting a lot of holes in the tree that you didn't need.
Yeah, it's a $2,000 piece of equipment, 50 cents per plug versus a $100 backpack, and I can just spray the bark in 5 minutes, and they work equally.
Okay.
So this is to be used only if the tree's going to die from EAB, from our perspective.
Okay. I was just more thinking in terms of if you're an arborist trying to decide whether to put the money into it or not.
Yeah. No, I know some arborists, in some cases, will be using this injection system for hemlock woolly adelgid, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There's lots of imidacloprid products that you can inject, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so here's the two-way valve. And the way it works is this will be in the tree, and then the needle will be inserted into the two-way valve, and then the dose would be right here. So it'll look like that. So there'll be the bark, and then I'll be about an inch beyond the bark into the cambium, and this plug will be sitting right there. And that, if I hit the on button for that, we'll fill this gap with pesticide. This one, instead of being powered with batteries and having an internal air compressor, this one is powered with an air tank. And I get filled up at scuba shops and paintball shops and stuff. So the drilling is the same as with either system. You're looking for a good, healthy spot as low on the tree as you can find that's got good live wood. And so I'll go right there. I try to go about an inch beyond where the plug is going to be set. Set the plug by hand first. And just set it into the point where it has made contact with the cambium and is set and made a nice seal. just beyond the bark. Needle goes into the valve. And the injection is done. So the actual injection is quicker than the plugless system because I don't have to wait for that tree to completely take those 4 mils into its vascular system. So the question is about the location and whether it's safe and legal to treat at a particular physical location. And so if there's ever any question about that, the experts and the people that have the knowledge and the expertise to determine whether it's legal there is the Division of Pesticide Control. They're with the Division, or the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Foods. And so within the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Foods, there's a Division of Pesticide Control. And they monitor and help people determine the setbacks from water, the setbacks from the street, there's setbacks from wells. There's all kinds of different setbacks. And so all that information is at their website. And so that's certainly a good resource to go to. The Division of Pesticide Control has a website for all that information. There's brochures on setbacks. You need special permits if you're within certain distance of open public water sources. There's setbacks on gravel wells versus dug wells. I mean, so there's lots of different information that are really important to know. And so that research is done even before you even come out to decide whether the tree is healthy enough to treat. That all needs to be taken care of first. There is an actual pesticide labeled for emerald ash borer that has the organic certification, and it's triazine is the trade name, and the active ingredient is azadirachtin, and it's from the neem oil. It's a neem oil based pesticide, so it's considered organic, and it works pretty good. It doesn't work as well as emamectin benzoate, and then from what Michigan state research shows, it's got about the same efficacy as imidacloprid products. So it's okay and pretty good at the beginning of an outbreak and sort of at the end of the outbreaks. But while the populations of EAB are super high in the neighborhood and there's a ton of beetle pressure on the trees, it just doesn't completely protect the tree the way emamectin benzoate does. And so that option does exist for people if they want to treat with a botanical pesticide. There's pluses and minuses with them, just like there's pluses and minuses with all the other pesticides. And so you have to do it every year, which means you've got to drill the tree every year, and it only can be injected. You can't spray it on the tree. It has to be injected. It's very sensitive to temperature. It's sensitive to photo degradation, so you got to be careful with it. Got to keep it cool, and you got to do it every year. The plus is that it's done ahead of time, so there's there's no contact with the pesticide, which is nice. You can have people drilling holes and putting the caps in ahead of the person that's just running around putting the...
So the canisters, can you buy them?
No, you got to fill your own. Those are reusable. Those canisters are expensive and you want to reuse them, yeah. Yeah.
They have that spring in it.
Yeah, so there's a spring in there with a plunger, and as I'm filling this, I'm pushing that plunger to the back with the product. So triazine is the trade name that they sell it under, and that product needs to be injected. It's not something you could spray on the bark. And so it's a plugless system, which is nice. You drill the hole, set this nozzle, which has a needle on it, and then you come along with these filled canisters with the triazine in it, and then once this is in the tree, all you have to do is set this like that, and once you've set it in, that needle opens the valve and allows that plunger to push the pesticide into the tree. But it's a plugless system, so you have to wait for the tree to completely take it. So this thing will just be pushing up against the pressure of the tree until the tree draws it all up in. It can go quick, it can go slow. Depends on the health of the tree and how nice it is, weather-wise.
So Kyle, what do you think of this tree? Is this tree worth treating?
So I consider this tree probably just beyond that 50% threshold. If I think there might be 50% of the crown alive, but probably not. I guess it depends on how valuable the landowner or the city thought it was. If it was super valuable and really important to somebody, I think the pesticide would save this tree, and I think it would live. If it was just part of a maintenance program on a large piece of property or out in the city streets, I probably would do a takedown on this. I wouldn't try to save it with pesticides because I do think it's more than 50% dead. But it's borderline. It's right there on whether it would live or die.
Yeah, it does look like it would lose some of these branches that are already dead. So either you have.
Yeah. So in this case, where we're in a park, even if I could save the tree with a pesticide, there's still going to be a lot of dead and dying branches that are going to end up being hazards anyway. So in this case, with this amount of dieback already in this park, it's probably a takedown versus a treatment.